there seems to be a common misconception of transmigration or rebirth or reincarnation in Indian philosophy, especially in the schools of Sankhya and yoga. And the common misconception that people believe is that the soul, or the Purusha, the infinite, changeless, eternal soul, is something that transmigrates and that goes from body to body to body. So my Purusha, or the Purusha that exists within me, is something that transfers or transmigrates into the next body, whether it's an animal or a deva or it's another human being. And this is a misconception because it's very clearly stated that in the Sankhya Karika and in yoga that the Purusha is changeless, okay? The Purusha, or the soul, is changeless. It doesn't move. It doesn't go from body to body. It is the observer that just stays in place, right? It doesn't really have a, it's not fixated in time and space. But it's important to understand that it's not the Purusha that moves, but it's Prakriti, or material nature, that envelops around the Purusha. So if the Purusha is this observer that's just there, then Prakriti envelops around it and does whatever it's doing while the Purusha is watching it, like a movie. So whatever your life is, your experiences, what you're going through, your feelings, emotions, your relatives, your attachments, your detachments, etc., this is all a movie to the Purusha as it's watching. Then, when the individual realizes that the Purusha is separate from Prakriti, that the soul is not the same thing as matter, and they in fact are Purusha and not Prakriti, then what happens is this dissipates, or actually it goes back into its original matrix, which is called Mula Prakriti, which is very subtle and it's all around. It goes back into its matrix, and this abides in its own nature, which is Yoga Sutra 1.3, Tada Drashtu Svarupe Vasthanam. But it's very important to understand that it's not that the Purusha is moving. The Purusha is not moving at all. And it's just that Prakriti envelops itself and then goes back into its matrix if the goal is achieved of Kaivalya. If the individual or the seeker actually understands that they are not the same as the Purusha, and they're actually different. Which later on Sankhya and Yoga reveal something very interesting, which is that the soul and matter were never bound to begin with. So it's like a plot twist. It's like, you know, oh, it's bound, it's bound, it's bound. And later on in a different Karika, it goes, it was never bound. It just appeared to be bound. So that's something that according to yoga philosophy or Sankhya philosophy, the individual has to understand this over time. And so if you could kind of imagine, you know, in Spider-Man, in the movie Spider-Man, where we have this villain called Venom, and Venom has this type of, you know, this substance that's, you know, that came from space, you know, so if it were to overtake me, it would just like absorb, it would kind of like just like absorb and work around me, right? So in a way, Prakriti is like that substance that just goes around and then like comes out in that way. It's like that venom-like substance. So in the middle, it's this Purusha, but around it doesn't touch the Purusha, but just goes around it in the same way as like that venom-like substance goes around the body of the person and then comes out when that person is ready to let it go. So it's important to understand this idea.